This episode is brought to you by Communications Training for Coffee Teams, a new Map It Forward workshop tailored to get your team communicating more confidently to improve general mental health as well as business profitability. Click the link in the show notes for further details. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and joining me for episode 4 of our 5-part series is Lena Parker, talking about energy security, energy transitioning, energy with relation to the coffee supply chain, not the coffee value chain. Lena, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Lee.
Again, supernatural. I really appreciate that approach. Thank you, Lena. So, in today's episode, we are talking about energy transitioning. So, why don't you remind us what energy transitioning is, and then we can talk about how it relates to the coffee industry.
So, energy transition, I think also you mean energy security as well. So, energy transition is the move from to more renewable energy sources. Mm-hmm. Typically, when we talk about energy, we're talking about electricity and gas and anything that creates electrons. And that process that all countries in the world are going through as they're making that transition to more renewable, low emission sources. Mm-hmm. And energy security being ways that while we're going through that transition, how people who are users of electricity can make sure that they have reliable sources of electricity.
Right. So in the last episode, we were talking about the different kinds of infrastructure that exist in the coffee supply chain, whether we're talking about the way that producers are picking in Brazil versus the way that mills are processing coffee in Colombia. So Colombia is a really interesting example because every smallholder coffee producer has what's called a washing station on their farm. So in other countries, you'll have a washing station that's communal. And a lot of producers will take their coffee to the washing station, whereas in Colombia, there's a washing station on every farm. Then we talk about the roasting process, where that's heavily dependent on combustion as well. And we were talking about gas stoves and other different kinds of energy requirements that are necessary at the cafe level. So we are going to have to undergo a transition in the coffee industry in order to bring us to the required standards that the countries that these different businesses exist in have to meet based on what their country has agreed to with regards to emissions, right?
Mm. And also what electricity they can actually get from their grids.
Right. And this is interesting in a country like Rwanda or Burundi or in Ethiopia, where their dependency on energy is not the same as, or their access, let me say, to energy is nowhere near the same as the access that they have in a country like Brazil or Colombia, or in coffee producing regions like Hawaii. You know, all of these kinds of things are going to be incredibly challenging. And what we want to talk about now is what is involved in that process of energy transition.
I think we've got to separate out the different problems.
Okay.
And so the way that I talk to executives about this challenge is I start with the meter, because typically it starts with cost, right? Mm-hmm. So your electricity or gas meter, let's just for simplification use the electricity meter. So your electricity meter effectively counts how much electricity you use from the electricity grid in most countries. I know that there are some countries that people find funky ways to bypass it, but let's just use Australia as the example. And so there is a challenge because most of the electricity that comes in from the meter is from 70% of that comes from coal. There is a whole industry, predominantly the energy industry, is focused on shoring up the supply as that coal supply goes away. And that's called in front of the meter. So anything that goes into the meter is called in front of the meter. So there are utility scale solar farms and big battery farms and wind farms onshore and offshore. There is investment in hydrogen. There is investment in a whole other range of ways to get the electricity that's going into your meter that you use to be renewable, right?
Okay.
That's not the problem that I think the coffee industry needs to focus on, and every industry. So then if there is a front of the meter, then there is something called behind the meter. And that means creating a way that everything that you do behind the meter either reduces your need for the electricity that you're using in the meter or creating energy sources that don't touch the meter. So if, for example, you're in your home and you have a solar system and a battery, if that solar system that you have is enough for anything that you will use, right? So let's say you have an EV as well. And when you come home from work in your electric vehicle, your battery has been taking electricity from your solar system and is full. You can charge that overnight and not use any electricity from the grid. You then effectively you have a very low reliance
on the grid
for your EV and for everything in the house on the grid. So your primary energy source is your solar system and the grid is a backup. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Right. So you can take that same, and what you've also done before you put your solar system in, you went through your house and put in things that were much more energy efficient than previously. And a great example of this is lighting, right? So you changed all of your old halide globes to LED lighting, which use at least 80% less electricity than previously. And one of the main users of electricity in a house is lighting. But it's also your washing machines and your stoves and all of that kind of stuff, right? So as you replace those assets, you replace them with more energy efficient assets. So can you see how just by changing your behavior in a certain way and with a small amount of investment, you can actually bring down your overall behind the meter usage, right? So that's why we start with reducing energy consumption. However, and someone's going to write in to you and say, but electric vehicles increase demand on electricity, and they do, because you're now adding another source of electricity that you didn't have before because it was using petrol. But why the world is moving to electric vehicles is because it displaces a fossil fuel with electricity.
Say that again. It replaces a fossil fuel. Okay, so we're getting rid of
the
emissions. Okay.
Right. But what we are doing is we are seeing that the world will increase its use of electricity into the future. It just has to happen because everything that I just said to you, right, is you're going to take gas stoves away. You're going to take boilers away. Heating and cooling systems will go away. And they will use more energy. So the first step is to find ways to actually reduce electricity. So all of these farms that are 24/7 that you have within your industry that are in these massive warehouses that have lighting all through them and cooling and heating all through them, replacing them with LEDs as an example is a great step. And by the way, they last a ridiculous amount of time compared to a halide globe. Like for every one time that you have to replace a normal halide or whatever the thing is, it's about 8 times compared to a LED light.
Well, I want to use a coffee example here, if that's okay.
Sure.
So, again, I need to credit the person who helped. I did not understand this before we were preparing for this episode. So this wisdom is not coming from me. I'm not a coffee roaster. and I don't want people to think that I know anything about coffee roasting beyond the very fundamentals by expressing this. So we have these smaller sample roasters that are electric, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're roasting coffee on them, if you were to touch them, you would burn your hand.
Yeah.
Right. And there are a lot of these small, like up to, let's say, 5 kilo roasting machines. They are fully electric, a lot of them. And a lot of small cafes or small roasters with, cute little businesses are using these kinds of roasters and operating them all the time. But when you touch them and they're getting super hot, it means that they're not really as energy efficient as they could be, because they're letting off a lot of heat, which is not getting used for anything and it's getting wasted. Whereas when you look at these huge, big, massive roasting machines that are operating day and night, 1.5 tons, their capacity is 1.5 tons of green coffee. You can walk up to them and they are at room temperature. They're at ambient temperature, which means that they are they're either insulated or they're much more energy efficient than the smaller counterparts. So the challenge is going to be there. We don't have any technology, even though they're much more energy efficient than the little ones. We don't have the technology at this point of time that can transition us from those big roasters to something that emits less carbon. But at the same time, we have this other problem where the smaller machines that are completely electric are not efficient. They're using too much energy.
So one of the things that excites me about the conversations that you and I have been having is, as I sit across all industries,
Mm-hmm.
right, that my organisation, Services and Coffee, is not one of them. But what I have started to realise is there is technology in some industry that actually services a need in the other. And that's what I think is going to be exciting for you. And an example that I have
Mm-hmm.
is digesters. And if we use the example of commercial coffee,
Mm-hmm.
and there will be waste product that comes from that commercial coffee.
Wait, hold on. I've got to ask what a digester is. I'm so sorry.
I'm just about to tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just about to tell you. Take it easy. Lee's favourite phrase, take it easy. So what a digester does is it takes a whole lot of product and it transfers it, it digests it and it turns it into something else. And so, as an example, in the water industry,
Mm-hmm.
Once you process water and you clean it, wastewater, sewage water, you take that, you clean it, you clean that water, and it goes through a process and it creates water that can be used for for something else, right? It basically cleans it. What's left over is called, I call it sludge. It's called, it's got a
mud.
scientific name.
They call it mud.
Thermal biosolids is actually the term that all of our water people tell me to use. But that thermal biosolid is very calorific, right? Because it's just waste product and it still has a lot of calorie in it. So what they do is they put it into a digester, and that digester processes it, and all of the gas that is used is actually now a renewable energy source.
Okay.
And so it is used for part of the process.
Like the kind of gas you get from fracking.
No, it is used as electricity into the process.
Oh, electricity rather than the same way that natural gas would be used.
So it is now a renewable energy source. And so if I think about some of the examples that you have been talking about, both through this series and outside, there are waste products from commercial coffee, right? A lot. I don't know what they are, but I can imagine through
just the processing, cascara and other things. Yeah.
And so that could all be used to feed digesters that could go into those processes that you were talking about to actually feed electricity into them, and that would all be behind the meter.
Okay, so here's the problem with that, right? Not a problem. All of
I'm
these
a solutions person, Lee. I'm not a problems person. Yeah, go ahead.
My clients would tell you so is Lee. Anyway.
I would tell you so is Lee. Yeah.
Anyway, so here's where the interesting challenge lies within this. As we were saying in the last episode, the coffee industry is an industry that operates on high volume but razor thin margins.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of businesses that are operating as zombie businesses without even realizing that they're zombie businesses, right?
Yeah.
Now we're asking them to transition at a time when global economics are rather challenging and interest rates are, scaring people away from borrowing money in order to invest in their business.
Energy prices are going through, to add to that, energy prices are going through the roof.
Right.
And there isn't a single jurisdiction that I'm aware of globally that does not have energy prices, electricity or gas, and gas is going at a much higher rate following the war in Ukraine, because Russia has so much of the supply that those prices are escalating. And so that is a significant contributor to what you're talking about.
Right. And so
if I can anticipate your question, which is how do they manage to navigate their way through the energy transition and through shoring up their own energy security in times when profits are diminishing and are uncertain. Mm-hmm. Was that where you were going with
100%.
So the one thing that I would start with finding ways to improve your energy efficiency through those technologies that I was talking about, and they're not expensive. They've been around for a long time. LEDs have been around since the 1950s, I think. I wasn't around then, but let's go with that. It's not a new technology. They have been around for ages, right?
Right, except a coffee producer, that's not going to, sorry to interrupt you there, but a coffee producer isn't looking at LED lighting as making any real significant change in the energy transition that they're going to need to make when they've got this huge big, let's call it a tractor for lack of a better term. But I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars per piece of equipment that's going to be required. Like the capital investment. Given that ag loans particularly, the interest rates on ag loans are somewhere between 30 to 50%.
Yeah, but you try and get an ag loan for a $300,000 piece of equipment in 10 years that runs off diesel.
It's not going to happen.
Right, and that's the point. The point is that the technology has to accelerate from whoever is manufacturing this stuff. They have to already be working on a way to electrify it.
Okay. So there's going to be things that block them anyway.
There's like I used the example before about car manufacturers. Right? Car manufacturers are just going to stop already have announced that they're going to stop manufacturing combustion engines in the next 10 to 15 years, some sooner. Right? But my point is it's going to take a range of solutions. You have to start with understanding, and it is mind-boggling how many people do not understand how much electricity they use or how much gas that they use. It has to start by understanding how much you use. And for bigger producers, bigger organizations, putting in meters to help you understand smart meters that help you understand where you're using your electricity is a really good place to start. If it's worth the investment. But then if it's 1 meter going into the thing, that's a great place to start. Even just understand it first, and then start to get understand your estate, understand your asset. What is it that is draining your electricity? What are you being charged for electricity? If people are finding ways to reduce their consumption, understand your bills, understand when your tariffs are high, understand when they're low, and how can you shift processes within your manufacturing or other things, if it's not manufacture, to low periods and not do it during the peak periods. That's the place that's all low hanging fruit that you can start with.
Right.
Replacing your lighting, turning off your air conditioning, putting in, you can buy these sensors that are like $2 each, right? From most stores, and you can put it into offices, into warehouses, that just, if there's no foot traffic in that area,
mm-hmm.
and it connects into the circuit board, it just turns the lights off.
Right.
That's the sort of stuff I'm talking about, and you would be absolutely astounded how much electricity is being wasted.
Right. We're going to head into the next episode where we're going to talk about how we're going to get started. And it sounds like we've already started that conversation, but how we're going to get started in getting people moving in thinking about the way that they can start identifying the ways that they can begin in the industry of the transition towards energy security. And we're gonna because
Bye.
the whole folks, just so that you know. You're an idiot, Lena.
Hey, I'm not an idiot.
You're not. She's really not. But the reason, look, when Noah was on the podcast, Noah, and a lot of guests struggle to do this, right? Like when I say peace, love, and peanut butter, they usually like say bye too late. And Noah did the same thing. Lena has been struggling, so she's been trying to anticipate.
I am not worthy to be compared to Noah, man. He's a rock star, so please don't.
He is, but you're absolutely on par there. But so anyway, we're going to head into the next episode where we're going to try and tie everything together. Okay. So Lena, get ready, please.
Bye.
Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in, friends. There are 2 ways you can support this podcast. Firstly, become a paid member of our YouTube channel. Secondly, you can join our Patreon for as little as $3 a month. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video before you leave, and check the show notes for more information. Now, this is what you should check out next.